Panda Global was actually asking for people to send them combo videos Marvel versus Capcom, any game in the series, so that they could add it to their future YouTube content. And it sparked a lot of conversation about Marvel versus Capcom 3 specifically, where someone actually tweeted and said that Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was probably the most expressive and creative game that he felt like he has ever played. Do you guys feel like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was one of the most creative, expressive, like I can almost swag as much as I want kind of games in any type of fashion that I want to games? You could be the swaggiest person in the scene. So how do you guys feel about that?
When it comes to Marvel 3, the closest thing I can think to relate to it is Michelangelo's David. Remember how great a piece that was, just as immaculate of a piece as Marvel versus Capcom 3. Um, yeah, I agree. It's a very expressive game. There are a lot of other games I feel like that are just as expressive, like Skullgirls is one of them. Really expressive. Like it's a lot of like. I mean, you got customizable assists. Like I think that's the only fighting game that has assists where you can just every move you can make an assist, which is I don't know why other fighting games haven't adopted that, but Marvel 3 was, man. When I tell you watching low tier characters is never better than watching Marvel 3. Watching somebody get scooped and duped and flipped and dipped with Rocket Raccoon and Thor, man, or somebody like Doctor Strange, the dishwashing hands, like it's amazing. I mean, he would. Well, I guess he wouldn't really consider super low tier because he got popular later on. But yeah, it's just like when you see people that like you play all these top tiers and like you'll see these tournaments, the top eights, Doctor Doom, foot dive, zero, Zuplio, have your daily bowl of Zupos, you know. But then you see somebody come in the bracket and it's like, oh, this dude using Jill, using Shumagarath, Rocket Raccoon, oh, this dude trash. He's about to get body. And he come through with some crazy tech and just wipe the floor with everybody. Like you love seeing that type of stuff. And I think to me that was the hypest in Marvel 3. Just watching these players. I'm trying to think of one of my favorite. Abigail. He used She-Hulk, Thor, and
Trombone.
Trombone. And boy, when I tell you that man was knocking some heads, all you saw was little circuit box on the screen, just and life bars disappearing. Like it was so dope to see that a team of characters is you like these characters suck. Why are you using these characters? And he's like, well, why am I losing like this? Why is my life bar disappearing? And you just like, there's nothing you can do about it sometimes. And to see people, and that's why I like character specialists as well. To see people put their time into these characters and go to the lab and find tech and combos and be able to actually compete against like the more meta teams and characters, it's dope to see. And I do agree. I think Marvel 3 is one of the games where that's the best in, and like you can be the most expressive in that regard. Me, I was a Spider-Man fan. I was gonna rock that character till I died. I don't care. People told me you'd be a much better player if you played top tier. I don't care. Spider-Man, Peter Parker. I'm throwing these webs and gonna catch these webs. Like, and X-23. She's another character. Like, she wasn't the greatest, but I just loved using the character. She's kind of cheap. Like, I had some tech with her that would make people like, bruh, it's so cheap. I'm like, deal with it. But yeah, I agree. Marvel 3, hands down, such a creative game.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that Marvel 3 was definitely a very creative game, especially in regards to like, we were talking about team composition. Uh, One of the things I like, I think Marvel 3 brought some of the characters. I feel like they kind of felt like they were in high demand, especially characters like like Deadpool and Amaterasu. Actually, they were actually two of my favorite characters when I was playing the game. One character that I figured I didn't think I would be playing with when I started playing was Super Scroll. Like I was kind of like, what? Why did they put this guy in Marvel versus Capcom 3? And then I was playing, I was like, I actually kind of like playing with this character. So yeah, I'm actually having a good time. I don't believe it, but yeah, I think there's like such a diverse cast of characters, and there's just so many different combinations which lead to so many different routes in battle. So I mean, yeah, like if there was just so much like like just this big tapestry that's just waiting to be weaved in just about any match. All you really had to do in most cases was you had to put in the time. You really had to put in the time to actually learn what each character was capable of in the matches. So you could know where characters were going to be after they got hit by a certain move. What combos, what supers led best into other supers. How to use your X factor properly, so on and so forth. So I mean, I thought MVC was pretty cool. I mean, the only problem I had with MVC3 was the lobby system when it dropped. That was pretty bad. But other than that, I thought it was pretty cool. Oh, and no, it was just the lobby system. That's pretty much it. Everything else was pretty cool as far as I remember about MVC3. So yeah, I would definitely agree that it's definitely kind of reminded people of how crazy fighting games can get, how off the wall combos can be. Like it's talking about before, how characters that are considered low tier can really shine when in the hands of somebody like saying a character specialist, characters that are not kind of looked down upon can really shine in the right hands. So I think that's one of those things that it's one of those stark reminders of things that people tend to forget in the FGC. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan. I didn't really play on Marvel vs. Capcom 3 all the time like that, but I am a fan of watching other people go to work. So yeah.
Yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, it holds a special place in my heart just because it's the game that really got me into the FGC. I just watched the FGC before, kind of lurked just to see what was going on. But that was the game that actually got me to tournaments and playing a lot more with my friends and sitting in the lab and just playing for hours on end. It's one of those games, it's one of the few games where it's not only enjoyable to play, but it's enjoyable to watch. Some games, some fighting games like Samurai Showdown, it's not that exciting of a game to watch, let's be honest, just because it's very footsie heavy. But with Marvel versus Capcom, you have Marvel characters and Capcom characters going at it, and there's so much flashing stuff going on the screen that just from a spectator's point of view, it just seems like pure insanity. And you're wondering, how are these guys even playing this game? But yeah, it is one of those games that I really wish Capcom could have supported for much longer. And I know Evan hinted on he was talking about how the game was with the lobbies and some of the other features. The big thing with MVC3 when it came out, like vanilla MVC3, is that it definitely was lacking in a lot. It wasn't a very good package at launch, and then it made things worse when they released Ultimate 6 months later. But I won't get too much into that. But
Oof.
yeah, it's one of those games where I definitely could sit in the lab for hours on end and just play around with different team combinations. It's funny because I know there's been a resurgence recently with the use of Parsec with certain players playing each other. And I recently watched Marlin Pie and Yipes. They were playing one another, and it kind of made me get that itch again to hop in the lab. And when I did, I actually sat there and tried some new team stuff just to see what I could come up with, and I had fun. And that's the thing about fighting games, or just games in general, that they should be fun. And that's something that Marvel vs. Capcom 3 really brought to the table. It definitely wasn't a perfect package. There were some features in it that were definitely missing at launch. Then you had the ultimate controversy. But for the most part, it's a game that I feel like players can kind of go back to and have fond memories of, especially with the way they screwed up MVCI Infinite. It's just, it is what it is. I don't know if we'll ever get another Marvel versus Capcom game just because working with Marvel is such a headache now. But what we have, if MVC3 is the way that we go out, then it is what it is. I'm glad to see there's at least a resurgence with it right now, and that it's fun to watch again. And also just the fact that one thing that I want to talk about is how in the middle of the game's life, how we got to a point with the tiers, how, of course, you have your Doom, your Zeros, your Virgil and Dante's and everything. People started figuring out stuff with the low tier characters. And I know Devin hinted on that earlier. Um, I think I forgot what player it was. It was Ryan something, how he had a team of Chun-Li, Phoenix, and I think Morgan.
Ryan LV.
Yeah, Ryan LV. Yeah, thanks. Um, Watching him dominate was just tons of fun. And so just seeing people kind of rediscover the game again using low tier characters and blowing up these high tier teams, that was fun to watch. And so it's just one of those games that I really wish could have gotten supported for longer because There are definitely some changes that needed to be made, with the infinites and with balance patches and everything. But for the most part, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is definitely one of those games that I think will be remembered for years to come.